Hello, this is Amelia Rodriguez. And this is my presentation video for the short story lesson for Sandra Cisneros, Americans. On the first day, let me get the next slide to go. There we go. So my objective for this presentation is that students will identify and discuss key themes in the story, such as cultural identity, family dynamics, and the immigrant experience. Literary analysis, students will analyze literary elements, including characterization, setting, and narrative voice. Critical thinking. Students will engage in critical thinking by examining the portrayal of cultural intersections and the significance of language in the text. Students will gain, this is cultural awareness, students will gain an understanding of socio-cultural context in which the story was written and its relevance to contemporary issues. To begin the lesson, I have a video where Sandra Cisneros actually reads her poem, or her it's a short story basically, also called Only Daughter. I am not going to include this now, I'm not going to show it, but it's about 7 minutes long, and it's a really good introduction into Sandra Cisneros. Who is she? What was important to her family? She was the only daughter of 7 children, so she had 6 brothers, and it really gets into basically the makeups of Mexican family, where girls basically are almost invisible. They are there to, the family's priorities is to get her, to raise her as a good woman who is respectful of men, cooks and cleans, and is going to be a very good wife one day. Contextual background. So for students who don't know the contextual background of the Chicano experience, I've included this, and there's several other little activities where the Mexican American students in class will help support those students who do not know of the Chicano or the Mexican American experience. Here it says the Chicano experience refers to the cultural, social, and political experiences of people of Mexican descent living in the United States. This experience is characterized by a unique blend of Mexican and American cultural influences. It is often shaped by issues related to immigration, identity, race, and the struggle of civil rights. You can't really see this, but we're going to do, the first thing we'll do as a class is the read aloud of the poem. I will start reading, and then I will ask other students to volunteer and take over. I basically thought I would take it one paragraph at a time. The story is not very long. Once we have read it, I will ask students for initial thoughts. Initial thoughts, what did they think? Anything stand out to them? I will check for reading comprehension. Then I will go to the second paragraph, and this is where the second paragraph is, you really need to infer a lot, and here is where I think that students who don't have the cultural knowledge of the American, the Mexican American student might be a little confused. So I thought I would read it again, and we would talk about what are the meanings here, because and I put this picture here on purpose because I think what is obvious sometimes of a culture is the food, the language, the visual arts, the festivities, the holiday customs, but then we have all of this stuff underneath here that is below the surface, the religious beliefs, the etiquette, the expectations of people, the views on raising children, all of these things, approaches to problem solving. These are things that are not really evident of cultures, and especially of the Mexican American culture. So Here is a quote from the text, second paragraph. Like la Virgen de Guadalupe, the awful grandmother intercedes on their behalf. For the grandfather who doesn't believe in anything since the first pre-elections. For my father, El Periquín, so skinny he needs his sleep. For Auntie Lightskin, who only a few hours before was breakfasting on brain and goat tacos after dancing all night in the pink zone. So in the notes, if you will see, you could see that I basically defined who is pre. It is basically similar to our Republican and Democrat parties. So I will explain to the students what are the pre-elections, and there is, pretty much the idea or the understanding and sadly the acceptance that the pre-elections are always framed, that in Mexico you really don't ever have true elections. The pre always seems to win. I have the definition to Periquín, the reference to anti-light skin, and how for Mexican Americans, usually light skin means more beautiful. And the foods, talking about the brain and goat tacos, having that kind of food that is not your typical kind of Mexican food we eat here, and dancing all night in the pink zone. We also have a conversation about the grandmother who intercedes and who's praying at the church. So we will have this conversations. Again, I will call on the Mexican American students in the classroom who are familiar with the culture to help me explain. Because if you don't get these, you can't infer this stuff if you don't have the cultural background. So I will have that conversation with students, guide it, and try to engage other students in the class. Then I will have small groups. I'll divide the students up into small groups, and looking. So we're going to talk about initial thoughts and reactions to the story. What emotions did the story evoke? What stood out to you? All right, so there's a couple in situations where the small children go back and forth, Spanish, English, Spanish, English. So we talk about code switching. What is code switching? What is it? Did you notice it first? What is it? Do you do it? All right, so I also would like to, again, elicit responses from students in the class who speak, who are bilingual, and when do we code switch, just to help students who are not bilingual understand. And I basically will admit that I do it. And when do I do it? I do it when I'm around friends and family who I'm very familiar with. Obviously, I try not to code switch in professional situations. So we'll have that kind of discussion. So this is small guided instructions into kind of giving background into the story. Then we reread. This is where I reread the second paragraph. There's a lot to unpack. You need to infer to really understand what is being said here. So maybe I need to move the second paragraph right here. If you are unfamiliar with the culture, you may be unable to do it. So those of you who are from this culture, let's talk about it and let's help anyone understand what she means. Okay, so I will definitely move that slide. Then we will talk about the themes that come out in this short story: cultural identity, family dynamics, and the immigrant experience. I will then split. What I'm going to do is have the children, I have adult students. I'll have the students, because this will probably, just those discussions of introduction will probably take us the first day of class. And I only have 2 classes a week with this course. So my classes are usually an hour and 15 minutes. So it will usually take about 2 hours. So for that, those where we are up to this slide. So here they're going to have for homework, and they're going to reread the story on their own, and they're going to take notes and look for evidence from the text on the symbol of La Virgen. I want them to try to start talking about it, thinking about it on their own, the significance of language and the code switching, the role of family and the tradition, and the immigrant experience. Okay, so they have most of the story. It talks about these children. They're outside of the church, waiting for the grandmother who's in church. I am so sorry. It is so hot in my office. Air conditions turned off on Fridays, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's now Friday, so it's very hot in here. So the whole role of going to church, there's things in the story where the grandmother is praying to La Virgen, basically interceding, asking the La Virgen to intercede for family members who don't go to church. So there's that big discussion around the tradition of church and the family and expectations. And then at the very end, someone comes up to the children and asks them, you've been out here for a long time. I think, who are you? What, and they tell them, this person, that they're Americans. So basically these children have gone back and forth. Yeah, it is known, it has to be inferred that they live back and forth. They live in the United States, but they also live in Mexico. And when they're with the awful grandmother, they are in Mexico. So I will tell the students that they have to find inferences. They have to talk about inferences. They have to find examples from text and to take notes on all this information, because tomorrow they're going to be in small groups and they're going to come prepared. They have to be prepared for participation. I will be giving points as I walk around and kind of get an idea of who is ready and is participating in the small group discussions. So this will be the end of day 1. Day 2, I will put them in small groups. Each small group will have a different theme. One will be the symbol of La Virgen. The second group will talk about the significance of language and code switching. The third group will do the role of the family and tradition, and group 4 will talk about the immigrant experiences, and they will I will pass out big chart paper, and they were going to take notes and put whatever they did on their own, but now they're going to talk about it as a group. We're going to write it on chart paper and post it around the classroom. This is what I'm going to use for some formative assessment. As each, I will call on the groups to go and present what their findings. And then, of course, I will assess and correct and maybe ask more questions to try to get more information from them on their groups. So I also have chart paper or small whiteboards. I think at that point when I put this together, I thought I would do it in small whiteboards. I have small whiteboards that can be hung around the classroom. I'm trying to save paper, so that's why I did that. So again, this is my formative assessment. And as we go, make corrections if needed, and then try to get more information from them again. So then we'll do this. We'll do that first, and then the second time I'm going to have the same groups. I may, because I'm looking at my class size, this one is a little bit more, I may group them together to make it a third group, maybe kind of split some of the people of the fourth group, throughout these three groups. So they're now going to talk about literary elements, characterization, how are the children portrayed, what do they learn about their grandmother. Group 2, how does the setting influence the story's events and themes? The whole story is centered there just at the church, outside of the church and inside of the church. That's it. So it's a very important. So I want to make sure that the students who are in charge of this are really, I'm going to be, like I said, this is when I'm going to be doing formative assessment and making sure that they're including all the details, evidence from text, and kind of helping out so that when we do talk about it as a whole group, the information is there. narrative voice. Discuss the use of the first person perspective and its impact on the reader's experience. From the video that we watch at the beginning, and where Sandra Cisneros is basically talking about her being an only daughter, it is obvious from having that background information that the narrative voice here is her voice, and she's speaking of her story, her relationship with her brothers. So this, I think the background knowledge I provided on that introductory video will really help them with this. All right, class discussions, similar to what we did, share their findings, any connections. I try to make connections between the first group discussion and the second group discussion. And then final assessment. Then this is on their own. They're going to write 2 short critical analysis essays. Each analysis must be at least 250 words, not more than 500 words. And the questions they're going to address is, how do Americans challenge or reinforce stereotypes about cultural identity? Then I give them a choice for one of these. Discuss the role of language in the story. How does the use of Spanish and English reflect the character's identity and experiences? Or they can choose explore the concept of code switching and its implications. And then here is my reference, and that is it. I hope I didn't go too long, but I couldn't find the length on the assignment or on the rubric. So thank you very much.